Welcome to HBCU Her Voice, a place where we celebrate the powerful voices and stories of remarkable women from historically Black colleges and universities. I'm your host, Shanasia Washington, a proud HBCU graduate myself. I'm thrilled to bring you this platform dedicated to amplifying the voice of our community. We dive into inspiring stories of resilience, success, and the incredible impact these women are making in the world. From trailblazing entrepreneurs to innovative leaders, we bring you the stories that matter, showcasing how HBCU experiences shape paths and fuel passions. We'll explore challenges, victories, and wisdom. Whether you're an HBCU alum, a student, faculty member, supporter, or simply someone who believes in the power of diverse voices, we are so glad to have you. So listen up as we share insights, celebrate achievements, and uplift our community. Together, we can inspire the next generation of leaders and ensure our voices are heard loud and clear. A grand welcome to HBCU Her Voice. And just like that, I am back with another amazing episode of the HBCU Her Voice podcast. And you guys know that this is one of my favorite places to be. We share resilient stories and, we just have real talk. That's why I love the platform so much. But I'm your amazing host, Shanasia Washington, streaming from Houston, Texas. And guess what? Today's like no other. We have another amazing guest. I'm so excited to hear her story on today. And we waste no time. She comes right to the stage, tells us her name, where she's streaming from, which HBCU she's repping, and guess what? We get that story. And without any further waiting time, here's my very amazing guest for today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Jazma Coates. I am streaming from Aberdeen, Maryland, originally born from Baltimore, Maryland, and I am repping Morgan State University.
And we're ready for your story, Jasmine. How can we know more about this beautiful woman in front of us today?
So I was born in Baltimore, Maryland. Both of my parents were recovering addicts. My mom had 20 years clean before she passed, and my dad had 21 days clean before he passed. My mom passed in 2020 from cancer, and 1 year later, my dad was killed from a drunk driver hitting him, and he suffered for 21 days before he passed. So as you can imagine, growing up in Baltimore to two parents who were addicted to substances, it was rough. It was tough. We lived in some very rough neighborhoods. We definitely lived in poverty. And I'm going to say probably about 10 years old, 8, 9, 10 years old, I went to live with my grandmother, and that really gave me the vision to even want to go to a HBCU. I was getting in a lot of trouble in school. And I remember my grandmother one day, I got suspended from school, and she had me pick cotton stick. And she was like, I picked cotton so that you can go to school and get an education. And from that day, I knew that education had to be essential for me. Not only that, I also got to experience living in a recovery home with my mom. And that gave me the vision to where I am today, which is a business owner of Journey of Life Behavioral Health Services, where we help individuals who are on substances and have mental health disorders. My mom was one of the hugest inspirations for me getting the business. She went into drug treatment in the early 2000s, and she never looked back. She told me it was a one-time thing for her. And I understood that with her strength, that other people can have that strength as well, and that strength was in me. And I was going to be hit with some obstacles throughout the road to getting here. My first journey, I had to go to school right after my mom died in 2020. Her last wish was for me to go back to school. She said, Jasmine, I want you to go back to school and become a counselor like you always wanted to do. Did not think that literally the very next year my dad would die, and so suddenly. Then 2 weeks after my dad died, I was in the hospital fighting for my life. I battled lupus. The lupus had shut down my lungs. The doctors was like, let's shift the focus to just keeping you comfortable. And I was like, oh, absolutely not. I remember laying in the ICU, doing my schoolwork, telling myself, I'm going to get through this. I went home. I started practicing a lot of holistic health. The doctors told me, you're going to be on oxygen for the rest of your life, for however long that would be. As you can see, I'm doing great. I'm on no oxygen. I'm actually not on any medication at all for lupus. My numbers look amazing. And I kept going. I just kept going with the resilience. I got my degree, 4.0, went on to get my next degree. And then from From there, I still endured more challenges because I was trying to open my business. And opening my business, that came with a whole lot of obstacles, just based off of me being an African American woman trying to get this business. And I was being hit with a lot of adversity. But I kept persevering. I was able to secure that business. And now I'm obtaining my master's of social work at Morgan State University, which I'm so honored to be doing. I do plan to give back to the community. Once I get this master's, I want to do a lot of nonprofit work to help individuals who have similar stories as myself, because I want them to see, like, I did it, you can do it.
Dear Jazma Coates, amazing. You are a warrior and you are worthy. Okay. So that's the first part of this segment. Okay. That's the first part of it. So you need to stand in that, because that's no easy stuff. Right. And I think sometimes even as we lived it, we'll get to a certain point and then we forget to take those strides back of, look at me now.
Absolutely.
How many things in places and spaces have I overcome? So
Absolutely.
That was such a beautiful story of survival, a beautiful story of perseverance, and a beautiful story of learning and navigating self, because there was a lot of self-navigation there.
Absolutely.
Two things from that first segment. The first thing, I was like, she said her grandmother went out and made her pick a cotton stick. And she said her grandmother said that she picked cotton, which means, baby, it's not that far in the past.
No.
So the fact that you're sitting in front of me, right? And I have a grandfather, they grew up on the farm. The baby ones or whatever, they have, when I say the baby, he's 80, but a lot of his siblings, of course, have gone on. But they have the memory of cotton fields on their land.
Absolutely.
You understand what I'm saying? So it's not too far away. So that, of course, I was like, oh, okay, I got to highlight that. The other part of it for me was having both parents deal with substance abuse.
Absolutely.
Heavy, right? It's already one thing when it's one parent, but you see it across both.
Absolutely.
When you mentioned, you said, I was 10 years old and I went to stay with grandmother and I started to have some problems. Did you know at that time that parents were battling substance abuse? What was your view of your parents at the time? Did you to substance abuse? Just like mommy and daddy, but that stuff is hard to shake. Did they have conversations with you about that? And what was kind of, in your eyes, your reality at that time?
So no, they didn't have conversations per se with me about it. It was a lot of domestic violence in the home with my parents because of the substance abuse. And my mom always felt like I held my father on a pedestal. I was a daddy's girl. I will not deny that. But the thing was, I had such high standards from my mom because, you have with titles comes expectations, and this is something that I'm learning. I'm teaching people, and I wasn't able at the time to see my mom as Natasha. She was supposed to be this person who was perfect because she was a mother. Mothers are heroes. Heroes are perfect. And so my mother came to me one day and was like, you think your daddy is so perfect, but he is the reason why I'm getting high. He's the one that introduced me to the drugs. So that's how I found out that about my dad getting high. My mother, how I found out that she was getting high, I walked in on her. She was in her bedroom. And, back then it was don't come in my room. I wasn't listening, came in the room, seen my mom getting high. And it was like a shock for me. I was like, what is she doing? She did crack cocaine. And I just remembered the smell. And I was like, what is that smell? I was like, it's not her cigarettes. And she turned around, started fussing, and I shut the door, told my brother, like, hey, I just seen mommy doing something. And then he kind of explained to me what it was. So that's how I found out both of them were getting high. I did not understand really what that meant at the time, but I do remember coming to my grandmother, 10 years old again, crying like, grandma, why are my mom and dad choosing drugs over me? Why do I have to live here? Why we can't be a family? Why we can't live together? And my grandmother telling me, come here, baby. And I'm thinking she's about to console me. And she was like, stop it. Stop it. What you're doing is putting unrealistic expectations on people. When a person shows you what they are and are not able to do, that is your responsibility to act accordingly. I didn't understand that at the time. But I always take that lesson with me now in life, and I expect people to be who they are, so that they can never disappoint me again.
Wow, that's definitely a tough lesson to learn at 10, right? About managing expectations and things of that sort. I don't think I was probably well over into my 20s before I
Yeah,
actually, I don't say got that lesson, but life started to teach me that lesson, right?
yeah.
I started to
Mm-hmm.
basically understand people, understand their actions, and even so much to the point to where like I still was kind of naive and blinded by it, still hoping for the best because you have a certain relationship with somebody or you hold them to a certain esteem, so you're hoping for the best. But they've
Yeah,
already showed you the reality. Oh, Jasmine,
absolutely,
I feel like I'm a preach, but they've already showed you the reality of who they
yeah,
are. And sometimes it's
absolutely,
mama, daddy, grandmother, sister, brother, whatever. Sometimes that title gets in the way of the vision.
absolutely.
You
It always
understand?
does.
Yeah,
It always does.
and it's something that and many of us, of course, can learn from. Like I definitely think at 10, I honor you, the 10-year-old who had to learn that so early to the people
Mhm.
who brought you into the world. That this, I keep telling you, that's no easy feat. So you're already kind of dealing with adult type things
Absolutely,
in a kid like state. Does that make sense?
absolutely.
Yeah. So when I told you like you were amazing, you were resilient, you were a warrior, you need to believe that from your core and stand on that. Because with
Absolutely.
many other people that I am meeting through this podcast, just through life and just the kind of air I'm bringing around me, is teaching different perspectives. So what that helps me do in the world is be a more empathetic listener, reasoner, and conversationalist because I'm coming from a place to where you share this intimate thing. And I tell all of my guests, I do not take this space lightly. I know a
Yeah.
podcast host, but it's much more than that to me. And most people get it to the end of these calls. They're like, girl, what was that, girl? It was intervention. It was conversation. It was love. It was knowledge.
Yeah.
That's why this platform is so important to me. Um, Let me go here first, and then I'll come back because another thing I want to touch on is this lupus thing. We had a
Yes.
guest about maybe about 2 weeks ago, 2 or 3 weeks ago, who talked about this. And I just had a cousin who's very young, I just graduated high school a couple of years ago, who's gotten a diagnosis now.
Mhm.
It's becoming a touch point for me regularly in my days and my interactions now in my family.
Mhm.
Talk to us about the diagnosis of lupus. What did you understand about it when they told you about it? And just kind of walk us through that because now that it's kind of new and fresh in my family, I find myself trying to decipher and figure out what's going on. And now knowing that I actually had an aunt as well as another younger cousin who eventually, through the
Yeah.
disease with having children back to back, it ended her
Yeah.
life. So I want
Yeah.
you to talk about that, the diagnosis, and kind of what you're doing to work through that diagnosis, and just give us some insight of your journey there.
Absolutely. So I got diagnosed with lupus at 27 years old. Years leading up to that, I would constantly get these fevers. I would be in pain, and they never could figure out what was wrong with me. I mean, like to the point I started feeling like I was crazy. I was having seizures. They could not figure out what was wrong. Now, my grandmother had autoimmune hepatitis, I always knew, but never anything else that I knew, and rheumatoid arthritis, which are all autoimmune diseases, meaning your body attacks itself. It's just a matter of where it attacks. And so finally, at 27, I had gotten a blood test done. And this blood test showed that and the person who ordered it was my now primary doctor, who I absolutely love because he was determined to figure out the answers of what was going on. His name is Nana Caesar, and he sent me for blood work. The blood work came back with some high antibodies, but it wasn't the lupus antibodies. So my ANA was always negative. But these antibodies showed that my blood was clotting some way. But this blood clotting disease only comes from a person that has lupus. So he sent me to the specialist, Dr. Heyman, who was also my grandmother's doctor, which when I walked in, he remembered me because I was going with my grandmother since a little girl. And he was like, Miss Coates, Miss Coates, because I was Miss Coates at the time. He was like, Miss Coates, you do know that your grandmother had lupus. And I'm looking at him like, lupus? No, she didn't. He's like, she died from lupus. Now, I took care of my grandmother up into her last breath as well. Never knew she was dying from lupus. They just told me that it was her autoimmune disease, but never named it. He said, so I'm pretty sure you probably have lupus. So he ran some more tests. He came back and he said, Miss Coates, you have lupus, but you also have what's called mixed connective tissue disorder, which is a little bit worse because you have multiple which overlapping autoimmune diseases. Um, so from there, that made sense of why things were happening, such as the lupus has attacked my kidneys, shut my kidneys down, my lungs, it has attacked my heart, my bones, you name it, is done it. Like I said, just 3 years ago, I was laying in the ICU, could not breathe on my own or anything. I came home. My husband is really heavy into holistic medicine. I mean, this man could write books on books on books. He started giving me some herbs. I changed how I ate. I do not eat any dairy anymore. I am a pescatarian, so I only eat fish and vegetables. Exercising is another big thing that I do, because the whole thing is the mucus in your body settles. You got to keep moving so that the mucus don't settle. But I noticed my husband always told me, if you give up dairy, you won't have the mucus. So dairy has definitely been the kryptonite in my life. I eat absolutely no dairy now. I eat a lot of fruits, a lot of vegetables. I take a lot of herbs that my husband give me. And surprisingly, I'm not on, like I said, any medication. This is coming from me taking 125 milligrams a day of prednisone just to support my lungs. I was walking around with oxygen tanks, everything. And I'm doing all this while I'm in school, mind you. I was determined. I was like, this is not going to take me out. I remember my mom having cancer and my husband doing the same thing for my mom. And because they gave my mother 6 months to live. She lived for 10 years. And he gave her the same regimen. She was eating well, doing good. And then one day she just, like out the blue, was like, I don't want to eat like this no more. I don't want to take these herbs. Literally, my mother died 1 year from the date of her telling us this, by going back to her old eating ways and habits. And I remember saying, people always will say, "Oh, I'll die for my children. I'll die for my children." But I started thinking, like, well, did my mom live for me? Did she make that sacrifice to stay around for me? So I chose, I'm going to live for my children, and whatever that meant, whatever I had to do to beat this lupus.
Ooh, that last part was some heat, because people will say out of their mouth, and you hear that all the time, I will die. But that reverse question,
Absolutely.
like, were you really? Oh,
Absolutely.
oh, look, that's heavy walking there, because out of the mouth anything can be said, but when it comes down to it, walking and walk, that's completely different. And I'm so happy that you brought in that holistic approach, because I'm learning in the world through this podcast that this holistic approach has been such a help for many other diseases, not just lupus specific.
Absolutely.
And I think I had a health person on here not too long ago, and I was just telling her, like, even how different I feel when I do massive cleanses, like when I get off of sugar and stuff for 3 or 4 months at a time. It really makes a difference. And now if someone has like a disease or something they're battling, I can only imagine the type of impact that has. And I will be sharing this, of course, with my family, so that they have context that, look, this lady has gotten off of the medication. She's living a beautiful and healthy life, and I'm here for it. And I'm loving to hear these different approaches on that. Let me go here before we get to the business. Now, I find that, sometimes when people have an entryway into, like I say, their calling, right? Now you're helping people through this space. And sometimes the pain turns into purpose. Like,
absolutely.
Like my pain, like, had to turn into purpose. Like, I didn't think it was in the pain, because it just didn't make sense. Like, what is this? Like, why me? So it did turn into purpose. However, like, when you're on that other side of helping, now I'm sure that sometimes you can see yourself in some of these children or whoever you're helping. Does that sometimes bring trigger points back? Does it sometimes take you back? And how are you able to kind of, because even me, sometimes my pain is not the same as yours, and some of the things I would consider as pain. I think a lot of my pain derived from grief and not knowing how to process it. And that would eventually come to a head years later, because Black people a lot of Black folk, let me just say it straight up, don't be talking about grief, don't be trauma. We just be flowing out here. You know what I'm saying? Because it's not taboo. It's taboo to kind of do that. So I kind of feel that sometimes when I meet a version of me, like in another woman, basically, that was me in, I'm gonna say 2015, or that was me in 2017. Sometimes I relive it. Not in saying that it keeps me stuck, but do you find yourself reliving trauma? Living trauma through your current work, and then what do you do to kind of not get so attached to these situations, because that they're heavy?
So for me, it actually does not bring trauma for me. It's like a breath of fresh air, because I'm able to see them when they first come in and just the growth. That is what's gratifying for me. Of course, I see situations that may be similar, or hear stories that may be similar of mine, but I'm gonna tell you something. School well prepared me for this. You do a lot of psychoanalyzing yourself when you're going to school to be a counselor, a therapist, anything like that. And so for me, I really never kind of had a situation where it was like, oh my God, this is so much like my story that is triggering for me. Because for me, I know it's almost like I go back to my mom. My mom showed that if this can be done, if she could do it one time, then it could be done. And for me, I'm like, if I can be here where I'm at, knowing my complete story, and our stories are so similar, I just know how great this person is going to be.
Yeah, that's good. And I think that that's a definitely healthy way to look at it. But I know that a lot of people that have early trauma, early trauma filled lives, sometimes some things bring them back as triggers. And many of them, some of them have not advanced past that and they kind of pull them back. And others have a healthy measure on it. So I always like to ask that, because I know I didn't even know, like even just doing the podcast, so many people have reached out and was like, I had all this stuff happen to me as a young kid and this, that, and the third. And so to hear it come out now and people are telling me, I just know the need to ask those questions, because I know that there's a need in my audience to hear that story of overcoming. So that's why I wanted to ask you that. Now, when you said, okay, now Jazma is going into business for herself.
Yeah.
Tell us. Look, I know how I felt when I said it, girl. It was crazy.
Yeah.
Tell me about when Jazma says, okay, big girl time.
Yeah.
I'm going into business for myself. I'm going to form JOL Services. Tell us about the business and how you got there. We have to hear it, because there are people that did, and we have to hear about that.
Yeah. So, my first career, I worked in the healthcare field. I was senior administrator at different hospitals within Baltimore City. And then one day I came home because I had seen some things that I just wasn't too agreeing with. I came home and told my husband, like, hey, look, I'm quitting. I'm going back to school. And eventually I'm going to have my own practice. And he just kind of looked at me like, what? And he was like, okay. So, fast forward, I get the degree and I start getting everything together for the business, and it just kept being one hurdle after another, after another, after another. And then finally, I remember I was opening the doors and I was like, look, I can't work this full-time job, because I was working at for Department of Social Services doing assessments, substance abuse assessments. And I was thinking, like, I can't work this full-time job and put my all into the business. So I was going to go and give my resignation. But something just kept telling me to hold off. I'm telling you, it was like I felt it in my spirit. Just wait, just wait, just wait. Then I remember Memorial Day, the Friday before Memorial Day, and I was walking in to get my resignation and got an email from the director saying he wanted to have a meeting with everybody. I got excited. I'm like, oh yeah, this is it. They're gonna lay me off. Like I'm excited. My husband like, well, how do you know this? And I'm like, because they're not gonna just call a meeting for no reason. They're laying everybody off because the contract probably failed. Blah blah blah. Sure enough, we go in the meeting. They lay everybody off. I am the only one in the meeting smiling. I'm like, this is great. I'm excited because I know I'm gonna get some unemployment, some severance, because in my mind, that's that cushion that I wanted when I stepped out there. So we got laid off, but I wasn't able to leave until the end of June, so that I could get all my benefits. So I did both. I did the business and I did work during that time, during June 1 to June 30th of last year. So finally, I was like, I'm gonna use this time to market myself, get my name out there, etc. I remember calling my husband like, hey, look, I need some help with marketing because he has the gift of gab. I said, quit your job. He's like, quit. I'm like, quit your job. Just trust me. If I can get you out here with me to get some marketing, we're going to take off and we're going to boom. He quit his job, I'm going to say within maybe, I'm being nice about it, maybe 2 weeks, probably sooner than that. I mean, the phones were just ringing nonstop. He had got us contracts with the state of Maryland, etc. So For me, initially, it was like this gut-wrenching doubtfulness. Can I really do this? I went through all those emotions inside of me, and eventually I was just like, you know what, this is not set on my spirit so hard like this for me to fail. I'm not a failure. I'm not a failure. I don't quit. I've been through worse. If I could get through the things that I went through growing up, anything is possible.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the part that I love that you brought out, because when I started this podcast, I told you that you were a warrior. And I knew that your words will come full circle in this particular episode. And that is what you just said is really a testament of that. So thank you for stepping into that, because so many times, people will think that I don't have enough to do it. I don't have to, I don't have enough skill set. I don't have the education and business, but you have proven that, hey, I can still do it. And you use everything in you, from your past, your resilience, to stand firm in who you are. So I am just very honored that you shared that with us. I am so very proud of you. And I definitely wish you all of the success in your business. Tell us a little bit about those services, just holistically what you guys provide if someone needed to perhaps, tap into you. Also, to give us perhaps the website and wherever you want viewers to connect with you as it relates to just Jazma or the services that you provide.
So we are located in Edgewood, Maryland. The name of the business is Journey of Life Behavioral Health Services. We're located at 2719 Pulaski Highway in Edgewood, Maryland. Our website is www.jolservices.com. We offer substance abuse services. We have services of intensive outpatient, partial hospitalizations. We have a nurse practitioner on site who also can help with any medication management needs. We also connect you with mental health services. We have case management services. We help you get birth certificates, IDs, anything case management related, any benefits that you're eligible for. All of our staff is certified and trained substance abuse counselors. That is their specialty. We work with children and adults as well.
I love it, Jasmine. I absolutely do. When I tell my guests, like when I let y'all be on the screen and I go to the green room back here, I'll be having my own hallelujah fit. I'm just like, I'm just back here cheering you on, because I know the story. I know that your story has been one that has been of triumph and victory, and I'm so very proud of you. So I'm just thankful for that. Now, this is the part in our show, Jazma, where I give our guests the opportunity to give us some final parting words. I tell them, give us something good to leave this space, and also to something that captures the essence of Jazma. So I'm going to cue over to you for final words before we close the show.
If I could leave everybody with something, the main thing that I want everybody to remember that my grandmother always told me is you can't have a testimony without a test. So whatever you're going through right now, it is temporary. Nothing in this life is permanent, not even our life. So if you think that you're having a bad day, just stop and take it moment by moment, because it may not be the whole day. It could just be that moment.
Ooh. And you know what, Jasmine, I feel like specifically in 2024, I've been living a big test, right? Mm-hmm. And I always remind myself of something similar to that, because like I literally told many people like this week, I'm like, man, it just feels like everything tried to fall apart on me this year. Absolutely. Felt like everything was just, I'm like, I don't even understand. Like, now it's September, we almost go to fourth quarter. I don't know how I made it through quarter 1, 2, 3. Mm-hmm. But I am so very grateful. And I do know that all of that, every piece of it, even the hurt, was divinely placed. And I'm going to leave. And I understand that I'm going to navigate through that. And maybe next year or somewhere down the line, I will have the beautiful story with all the scars and everything.
Absolutely.
To tell and share. I want to thank you for being here, Jasmine. It's been such a beautiful episode. I can't tell you how proud I am of you. I know that you've ran a race, baby, and you still got so much more to do. And I definitely pray and speak over you that all the things that you desire in your heart come to pass.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
This has been a fabulous episode of HBCU Her Voice. You guys know I never leave this place without telling you guys that I love you. I tell you, always let your voice shine, because transformative things can happen when you do. And really, I'll be back in no time with another amazing guest on the HBCU Her Voice podcast. But until then, we're out and we thank you.